Laura.
You're right through that door, and I guess you can't walk over here and come here because the cord isn't long enough.
I did that the last time, and you know what? Nobody knew what I was doing, and like everyone was surprised because you made me go over.
I know, but you can't. You just can't walk over, huh? Can't just come over.
Do you want me to walk over?
Yeah, just for a second.
Is that possible?
Yeah,
okay.
Just walk over.
Just for a second.
Hannity
gets
over.
a second.
Okay,
right,
this is exciting TV. Let's see how long it takes us. Do we have the Jeopardy theme music?
Yeah, okay, I got it. I'm walking over.
Okay, his MP's going to have to connect them when he comes in.
He's got a microphone.
Oh, he has a microphone?
Wireless.
He's wireless mic? See, we don't have, MP, we don't have wireless mics in our studio. We do, but why? I feel like I'm all hooked up all the time. There's no freedom of movement.
Whoa.
Hannity,
that would have been great
what
TV.
I don't understand is, like, I don't get wireless mics. How do you get a wireless mic? Is that more expensive?
Okay, with all
you're
due
the
respect,
star.
I'm like grandpa here. I've been here 23 years. How long have you been here?
A long time.
So I walk into the makeup room tonight, and what's the first thing you do? Oh, you only have 3 jokes in your repertoire. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're
Ingraham.
Oh, you get to
all my friends say, can he pronounce your name right before the end of the new year? I said, I don't think so.
Okay, why do you not? You call me all sorts of names.
I don't call you names at all. Hannah Tide. Hannah Ties. Okay, I have a serious thing. I loved watching your interview with Melania. Mm-hmm. She has been maligned and ridiculed and unfairly attacked from almost day one. But before they got into the White House.
Here's the most amazing thing. She's been independent since traveling Milan, the world, school, a world of modeling, which is extraordinarily tough. And English is her 5th language, not her 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Right. And more importantly, she has the same passion. Look, the president, who I know really well and support, and I believe is treated unfairly, that president, this is getting double speak in my ear, right. that president works day and night for the country, and we've had success. And she, too, works day and night. And I've never seen such an abuse of an entire family like I've seen here. Not only that, the full power of the deep state, Democrats, media, it's unrelenting.
No, they're frothing at the mouth now because they think they think they're cornering their prey and they have them right where they want. And I can say the American people are so much smarter than the folks over at the other cables, the folks who are constantly maligning good people. And the setup from the beginning, the more I look at this, and I'm getting this tonight, Hannity, the setup from the beginning, and you touched on it with Michael Flynn, is appalling what they did to Michael Flynn at 33 years.
This is how we treat
it's disgusting.
Our veterans.
I gotta say, it's disgusting.
But I will tell you this, mark my words, it won't take long. They are so nuts in Nancy Pelosi's Congress. They are going, here's my prediction, by month 1, you will see the insanity of how extreme this party is coming out. And it's going to be, watch Donald Trump's numbers go higher than they've ever been.
Oh, they always take it a step too far. But so you have a part 2 tomorrow?
I honestly, being on that helicopter today, watching those planes come in, land, take off, watching how the people gravitated towards her. Yeah. One thing I didn't say, which is true, her approval rating's higher than the president's. And he's so competitive that I can just imagine that's kind of...
No, it's great. I can't wait to look forward. And thanks for coming to D.C., and I'm glad you did the interview.
From now on, I'm just coming in here.
Yeah, just do the show from here. It's more fun.
Well, they won't let me do the show from here because it's your studio. You have to prepare.
By the way, your studio the other night, I did my show Monday. Could you import our graphics next time? Because they're like, oh, no, we can't import your graphics. I mean, everyone's trying to do their best. They're going to kill me. But I was like, this is Hannity's studio. I'm like, oh, I almost did like itching,
this is too many Hannitys for me.
It's like itching powder on the seat. I was going to do something, but they wouldn't let me. Anyway, Sean, have a good trip back. All right, my friend.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
There you go.
No Grinch for you. All right, everybody. This is a long lead-in. The whole show is going to have to change now. All right, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingram Angle from Washington tonight. It was one of the biggest stories of the year, and there are still many outstanding questions. Tonight, the Ingram Angle will bring you an update on the Kavanaugh fallout. Is there an investigation into who leaked Christine Ford's letter? What about the criminal referral submitted to the DOJ over false testimony by Michael Avenatti and Julie Swetnick? You bet I'm not going to let go of that. Answers ahead. Plus, extortion at the southern border. What folks in the caravan are now demanding of President Trump. Hint, it's not even asylum. Raymond Arroyo is also here to break down the body language inside yesterday's Oval Office slugfest between President Trump and, of course, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. I guess that's among. And, by the way, a look at the outrageous new Dick Cheney movie coming up in Seen and Unseen. And Devin Nunes will be here to tell you why the Democrats ending corruption probes at the FBI is very bad news for the country and what we can do about it. But first, immigration truths the Democrats deny. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Congressmen and senators are supposed to be fighting for the American people, their constituents. But when Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer pounced on the president in the Oval Office yesterday, for whom exactly were they fighting?
We have a disagreement about the wall, whether it's effective or not. Not on border security, but on the wall.
You can't have very good border security without the wall, no.
That's absolutely not true. That is a political promise. Border security is a way to effectively honor our responsibility.
And the experts say you can do border security without a wall, which is wasteful and doesn't solve the problem.
Who was Chuck Schumer looking at in that clip? By the way, we have a very fascinating body language expert analysis of that entire exchange coming up in the show. But back to this. Both the Senate and the House oath of offices are nearly identical. They begin like this. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. At this point, are we even sure that Chuck and Nancy took the oath? I have a news flash for the dynamic duo. When migrants illegally cross our borders, whether they come to work or to collect welfare using false documents, whether they come to deal drugs or join murderous gangs that are already here, this does constitute a foreign enemy action. That's why Trump was so clear at the end of that Oval Office exchange yesterday. He understands the threat and he wants to answer it.
If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck.
It's that important for him. But the Democrats are determined to block Trump's efforts to fortify the border, and you can see them. They recoil at any border wall talk. But here are the facts. The Democrats are willing to sell out the country, law and order be damned, in order to deny Trump a victory over the wall. A few years ago, they were all for fortifying the border, but not now. Of course, if we had a media that publicized actual facts on illegal immigration and other immigration issues rather than obsessing 24/7 about Michael Cohen or focusing on a few really sympathetic people in Tijuana, well, it would have a lot more Democrats feeling the pressure on this issue from the voters. Check this out. A new Gallup World Poll found that nearly 160 million people around the world want to emigrate to the United States. 160 million. I bet it's more than that. Well, naturally, the U.S. is the top destination for immigrants. 21% of them would like to come here permanently. Well, how are we supposed to deal with that kind of demand for access to our shores? Obviously, we can't absorb half of our current population. Or is that actually what the Democrats want? After all, that would be an entirely new country. The pragmatic position here, my friends, is simple. There must be an orderly legal process, one that protects the interests of the American people first when it comes to immigration. Most Americans, I really think, have no idea of the true cost of illegal immigration. Again, the media will not report it. Let's look at health care. Even though illegals are forbidden access from federally funded health care, Forbes magazine estimates that 3.9 million uninsured illegals receive about $4.6 billion in health services from the federal government, federal taxes. $2.8 billion from state and local taxpayers goes to illegal immigrants, and $3 billion from higher payments by insured Americans. In other words, you're paying it because your costs are jacked up. All told, Americans cross subsidized health care for unauthorized immigrants to the tune of $18.5 billion a year. Now, with that money, we could build a triple wall with all sorts of cool, stuff on it along the border. Come on. $18.5 billion? The president knows well that our loose asylum laws, another issue, the catch and release policy, chain migration, have also acted as magnets, and that has ballooned our illegal immigrant population. Once in country, they place an enormous stress on local law enforcement, as I said, healthcare providers, and our schools. Resources that should be benefiting Americans and legal immigrants. This money should be spent on our people and the people who've respected our laws to come here, not on non-citizens who are illegally present. Here's a perfect example. According to government data released yesterday afternoon, in President Trump's first fiscal year in office, more than 2,304 people were arrested for either employing illegals or working illegally in the country. That's a 700% increase from the previous fiscal year. Now, this is all a direct result of Trump authorizing ICE to investigate all crime committed by or with illegal immigrants, and not just focusing, of course, on the most serious cases. Well, now Democrats are going to say, why is the government arresting hardworking immigrants? They're just seeking a better way of life. Well, this is a simple twofold answer. One, they're not here illegally. But two, and just as important, they are taking jobs that hardworking Americans do not have access to. We cannot incentivize corporations to use cheap labor, giving them an unfair advantage and destroying other companies' abilities to compete. The crackdown also, by the way, sends a message to the next wave of illegals. You too will be deported if you try to come here and work without permission, and of course collect all those benefits along the way. So don't even try. Now, my friends, this is Christmas time. And although the country is doing better, a lot better under Trump, many Americans are still hurting, particularly those entering the workforce for the first time. Single mothers and people without college degrees. Many happen to be black and Hispanic. They don't have groups, by the way, like Pueblos Sin Fronteras or Central Sin Fronteras working on their behalf, filing cases on their behalf. Of course, as the competition from the cheap illegal labor harms their chances of employment, who's going to advocate their cases? Democrats used to claim that they cared about our poorest citizens, the little guy. But this year, Chuck and Nancy seem more like the Grinch, making promises to the illegals.
There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here.
Well, sure, give all the goodies to the illegals and leave the poor and the working class to pick up the bill. And by the way, take their tree, without so much as a lump of coal in their stockings. Let's hope that Trump is successful before Christmas in getting the wall funded, and let's hope Congress finally gets its act together and remembers the meaning of that oath that they all took. Otherwise, the Grinch may get his way, or her way. And somehow, I don't think this will happen to her at the end of the story. And that's the angle. Every time I see the Grinch, I'm just so happy. Isn't that the best Christmas special ever? Here now to react, Chris Kobach, Kansas Secretary of State, and Scott Levinson, Democratic strategist, president of the Advance Group, and Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, and author of the forthcoming book, Can't Wait, The Case for Trump. All right, Scott, as I just laid out in my angle, the burden of immigration every day on everyday Americans, illegal immigration, is pretty stark. So why do the Democrats seem to ignore the cost borne by the average working person?
What we actually do is recognize the fear-mongering that's gone on for months, and this fear that's been created by the Trump administration.
So you will not, if you could just let me
finish the thought, Loris, my first
thought
out.
Scott, don't roll your eyes. That doesn't make you any more effective.
Well, no, it doesn't. If you just let me finish the thought again,
Scott, you did this last time,
no, what you do is you do fear-mongering.
No,
you do
we're not
fear-mongering. Fear the caravan. Fear the caravan. The caravan's coming.
We didn't talk. We talked about a lot more than the caravan.
You want to talk about the money? All right, Laura. You know what? Let's talk about the money.
See this right off off the top. I want everyone to see this off the top. This is what Democrats do. I asked a simple question. Scott, I'm going to give you a chance. In 3 minutes, you're going to have 3 minutes to think about your answer, and then I'm going to come back to you. Okay,
Let's go
3 minutes.
right now. Why are you running?
Okay, 3 minutes, and then you'll come back. I'll go to Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, you've written about this, where liberals refuse to engage in a substantive dialogue. What are we going to do with the limited pool of money that we have, with all of the problems that they admit and they claim that we have in the country? What do we do with the limited pool of money? VDH.
Well, we take more immigrants than any country in the world. 20% of all the immigrants in the world come to the United States. We have more than we've ever had, 50 million, and we're getting to the percentage-wise, it's an unprecedented in our history. So we're very magnanimous, and $75 billion go to Central America and Mexico in remittances. And if you do the math, it works out to about $6,000 to $7,000 per person here who's undocumented, and that's $500 or $600 a month. And 60% of people here who are undocumented are on state assistance, or federal or local. So, Laura, you're basically asking the American taxpayer to subsidize remittances that go back. And that's in addition to about $2 billion in direct aid. And we have over 500 sanctuary cities where the immigration laws are not applied, and we don't do that to American citizens. If you disagree with the EPA regulation or gun registration, you can't set up a sanctuary gun city and say, you know what, federal laws don't apply to us. And, you know, it's sad because people should if they have social justice questions, march on Mexico City or Guatemala City, not San Diego. And I think we really need to recalibrate the morality of all of this, because we have this idea that we're the victimizers and people trying to break in are the victims. But if you actually look at it, as you said, American citizens have competition for low-wage jobs, entry-wage jobs. Our social services are swamped. And then there's literally millions of people all over the world that play by the rules in Nigeria, South Korea, India, and all they want is a chance to be a legal immigrant on a meritocratic basis.
We're going to go back to Scott now. Because, Scott, you heard my initial question. You heard Victor Davis Hanson. I will give you a chance now to answer the question because we love having you on.
Go ahead. As if we're in a three-card Monte game. If we talk about how much the immigrants are costing this country, we will forget the fact that this president committed to having Mexico pay for this wall that he wants. Nobody's talking today about how Mexico is no longer paying for the wall.
Okay, so you're still not answering the question.
We're all concerned about the cost of immigration, but we don't talk about the fact that the president committed to having Mexico build the wall.
Okay, so Scott, you're making our points for us.
Does that concern you?
Well, a lot concerns me. You know what one thing concerns me? The fact that I've given you 2 bites at the apple and you passed each one. No, I said multiple times on the show, you obviously missed it, that Mexico is not going to pay directly for the wall. But Mexico will not pay directly for the wall. But I'll tell you what, Scott, you don't want a wall. You want open borders, and you won't answer the question. You had 2 chances, 3 strikes, you're out. Go ahead. Listen, I want him to talk all show because we'll just get more Republican registration.
Talked about how they wanted border security. That's what they spoke about at the meeting.
You take them all in, Scotty. You take them in your house and I'll be impressed. Go ahead.
Anytime.
There are three major losers when we have unbridled illegal immigration right now. The first, as has been mentioned, is the American worker, because not only are those jobs taken, you also have wage depression, as Jorge Borjas has mentioned and has written about extensively. So the American workers still in those areas are working for lower wages. Secondly, the taxpayer. The total amount net, even if you take into account any taxes illegal aliens pay, the total amount that we taxpayers are on the hook for every year is over $100 billion if you look at state expenditures and federal expenditures. And then the third category of people who lose are the victims of the thousands upon thousands of illegal alien committed crimes. And as President Trump pointed out in that discussion yesterday, there is the terrorism risk as well. He mentioned 10 terrorists who've come across the southern border. Actually, there have been 15 publicized cases, and it's probably much higher than that because there are many that we didn't catch. So we have a very real cost in terms of our security, our jobs, and our tax burden.
Victor, there are about 40 to 50,000 American veterans of all races and backgrounds, including legal immigrants, who are sleeping on the street on any given night, and some about 2 blocks from where we are right here, because there's not enough room in the shelter near us, and so they're on the street. I think most Americans, if we have extra cash, extra money, they serve their country. They shouldn't be on the street. We should do something for those people. We all want that. But in this case, the money drives and flows to individuals. God bless them. Everybody's a child of God, but who violated our laws.
Zero sum that doesn't exist.
And so, Victor, again, liberals don't even know when the question is being directed at them. I'll get to you. Hold on. Victor, the question is, why has the shift occurred in the Democrat Party? 12 years ago, Obama and Schumer were all gung-ho on the triple fencing. Now you can't get them to talk about it. Why?
No, it's simply a matter of numbers, because when we had 2 or 3 people here, 2 or 3 million people illegally, then they thought it was an issue that unions were really angry about, and they were worried about low-wage constituencies in the inner city and Americans. And then suddenly when we got up to 11 or maybe 20 million people, and we had children of, we have 50 million immigrants total, and when you count their children, we're up to 88. 90 million people, and 1 out of every 4 Californians wasn't born in the United States. And then it became a demographic issue and a political issue. So Nevada flipped. I'll be frank. California is never going to be red again. Nevada's not going to be red. Colorado is not going to be red.
To get to the point, VDH, it's about changing the demographic makeup of the country, which they hope will change the electoral makeup of the country, period. Is that cynical?
It's 2 things: power, political power, and money. It's employers that want cheap wages, and it's governments overseas that want $75 billion in remittances.
All right, guys.
And remember, they ask very poor people to send back money and be subsidized by the American taxpayer and live a very tough life so they can support them.
50% taxes. This is when I wish I could have you all for an hour. Thank you so much. Great panel. And by the way, it really was the story of the year, and we're staying on it because there are still outstanding questions. And my question is, why isn't anyone asking them? Up next, we examine the reemergence of Christine Blasey Ford and bring you exclusive updates about where the investigations stand on that leaked letter from It was the confirmation battle that captivated the nation just over 2 months ago, and there's still many unanswered questions. Justice Brett Kavanaugh had his name dragged through the mud over still uncorroborated claims. Despite that reality, Christine Ford remains a media darling, resurfacing for the first time since her public testimony to deliver this message while handing out an award for Sports Illustrated.
The lasting lesson is that we all have the power to create real change, and we cannot allow ourselves to be defined by the acts of others.
Her reemergence has led us to dig back into this case, specifically whatever came of the investigation we were led to believe would be launched into the leaking of her initial letter to Senator Feinstein's office. A Senate staffer tells the Ingraham Angle exclusively tonight that the Judiciary Committee never actually submitted the leak inquiry to the DOJ for investigation. It's unbelievable. Moreover, there is no word tonight on whether any individual offices are investigating it. My question is, we all had to go through that. The Kavanaughs had to go through that. Don't the American people deserve some answers on how it all got started? To help us unpack it all, we're joined by Helgi Walker, former colleague of Kavanaugh in the White House counsel's office, and Carrie Severino, the Judicial Crisis Network, and attorney Scott Bolden, former DC DNC chair. Carrie, let me start with you. What could be the reason behind no formal leak investigation having been launched, despite what we were promised?
Well, it's really discouraging because obviously this is a serious breach of Senate procedure of, all we know is Senator Feinstein's office had it.
Walk us through what happened again.
So the letter was sent to Congresswoman Eshoo, right? She gave it then to Senator Feinstein. So as far as we know, those 2 offices, plus obviously Blasey Ford's lawyers themselves, were the only ones who had this letter. Not exposing it was the reason, the excuse that Senator Feinstein gave for not actually giving it to the FBI and doing what they should have done initially, which is what they did with Justice Thomas, saying, hey, let's actually look into this and have them do it in a professional, confidential manner to preserve everyone. They didn't do that. It got leaked to the media in all sorts of suspicious timing, etc. Feinstein herself, when asked during the hearings, didn't seem to be, she's like, well,
she turned around. Remember, she turned around?
You guys didn't leak it, did you? I mean,
that was phony baloney.
Clearly, she had done her due diligence, right?
Yeah, that was choreographed.
This was a real problem that they'd be leaking this. So someone here, among the Democrats or her own lawyers, was doing something that she said she didn't want and caused this huge national blow up. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Well, it's criminal. It is criminal to do this. You cannot do what they did under the rules of the Senate. Scott, it doesn't matter if it happens to a Republican or a Democrat. Without rules in place to safeguard the entire process and also an individual's innocence, I mean, presumption of innocence, anyone can come forward with any allegation at the 11th hour and sink a nominee, whether it's a Democrat nominee or a Republican.
Well, in this case, Senator Feinstein, her response initially was that she wasn't authorized to release it to anyone. Protocol would have said you should have, but Senator Grassley is the one that said it would be investigated. Why don't you register a complaint with his office? With the Senate, and let's get to the bottom of that, because they certainly didn't want to get to the bottom of the truth in regard to the Kavanaugh hearing. So I'd back you on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Helgi, this is what. Remember what Blasey Ford herself said at the hearing about wanting this to be, handled confidentially.
My hope was that providing the information confidentially would be sufficient to allow the Senate to consider Mr. Kavanaugh's serious misconduct without having to make myself, my family, or anyone's family vulnerable to the personal attacks and invasions of privacy that we have faced since my name became public.
Helgi, that was a very poignant moment during the hearings, and she, at that point, to many Americans, was extremely sympathetic. But who was to blame for that? And what was the motivation for conducting themselves as they did, whether Eshu's office or Feinstein's office? I don't really think it was Dianne Feinstein herself. She's not a stupid person. She wouldn't do that. But someone did it with the thought of needling this investigation forward at this moment.
Someone did it with the thought of pushing this into the public realm against Dr. Ford's own wishes, as Kerry said. And I think they were members on the Democratic side of the aisle of the Judiciary Committee, probably staffers, and we still don't know the answer to any of these questions. And the consequences were serious, as you said. Motivations were blatantly, transparently political, to do anything they could to stop Brett Kavanaugh from becoming a Supreme Court justice, and luckily that failed. Luckily, as Senator McConnell said, the mob did not win, and sitting here today, I think that's even more true than ever. Thank God the mob didn't win.
Well, if the allegations were true, then he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. So it's pure conjecture to say someone on the Democratic side leaked it.
If you beat your wife 2 weeks ago, but there's no one who saw it, should you be sitting here? You know what I mean? It's like
people who had it were Democrats.
You don't need a Democrat leaked it.
There was no corroboration. That's why the whole thing fell apart.
Didn't happen. Are you serious? Just because you can't prove it or corroborate it doesn't mean that you couldn't have it. Is that what
you want to do, Supreme Court nomination? This is going to be fun when the Democrats are back in.
It was powerful. It was credible. It was substantial.
Well,
and even Republicans said it was. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah, $647,000 was raised in GoFundMe before it was closed. And the Blasey Ford team said that they wanted, she said that they used the money to protect ourselves against frightening threats, including physical protection and security for me and my family, and to enhance the security for our home. Any unused donations after the completion of security expenditures will be donated to organizations that support trauma survivors. Any thoughts on that's a lot of money. That's a lot of protection.
Well, she's certainly not the only one who's gotten threats. I know the Kavanaughs have gotten extensive amounts of threats on this. And again, this didn't have to happen.
And they donated. They didn't take their money, right?
They declined.
Yeah, they couldn't.
No, but that $600,000 goes a long way towards security enhancements, I'm sure. But,
all right.
But thankfully, she didn't have to pay for her lawyers in that, too, because that was all donated. So I think,
and connected by some of the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee.
The bottom line is it didn't have to happen. If they had not leaked it, she wouldn't.
Wasn't McCabe's lawyer, wasn't Andrew McCabe's lawyer, her lead counsel, I believe? Am I getting that right? It's all one tangle. All right, panel. There's more digging we did, though, because Ford wasn't the only one to bring unsubstantiated claims. We also learned tonight that no official process has begun with those criminal referrals initiated on Kavanaugh accuser Julie Swetnick or her attorney, Michael Avenatti. All Chuck Grassley did was send referrals to investigate them for allegedly making false statements to the Judiciary Committee, but nothing has been done or made public since. Helgi, your reaction, how much is there to investigate here?
There's nothing to investigate because Julie Swetnick has pretty much admitted that this was all made up. The supposed corroborating witness that she had, Avenatti, submitted her declaration. She came forward to not a conservative media outlet and said he twisted her words, he made it up. I mean, it's pretty much a clean-cut case that this was fabricated.
That doesn't mean it's fabricated.
Well, October 1st, let's put up the graphic, guys. These are Julie Swetnick's, some little problems she has. October 1st, 2018, she told NBC her Kavanaugh story and the account deviated from her affidavit. And then, of course, her ex-boyfriend, just for the good measure, said she threatened to kill both him and his unborn child, and said she's exaggerating everything. Take that with a grain of salt coming from an ex-boyfriend. But the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, sent that criminal referral in. But I think in these cases, you can't just like say, oh, we're going to do this, and expect nobody's going to ask any follow-up questions.
Yeah, but if you don't care, all you care about is getting Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, and getting
we care.
him confirmed.
No, we're pointing out to you that we do care about the process.
You know what?
Otherwise, we'd just celebrate all the time.
Well, we both care, but it's the leadership on the Judiciary Committee and the GOP on the House and Senate to pursue this. They haven't pursued it, so that confirms that they never really cared about the referrals or the criminal investigation of the Democrats, if you will.
I disagree with that.
Because of the height of the moment.
I disagree with that.
It sounded good.
Chairman Grassley took a strong stand in making the referral. He didn't need to do that, and I think it's right that he did that so that people know you can't just toy around.
If he referred it, then shouldn't they be the ones pursuing it? I'm not sure the Senate isn't the ones to do it. I'm assuming it's in the FBI.
FBI.
Ask them too.
All right. Thank you all. We're going to highlight this because it's time for the Seen and Unseen segment where we expose the big cultural stories of the day. Watching the body language at yesterday's heated Oval Office meeting, we thought it would be instructive to break down what it all meant. And we have some news about the new Christian Bale Dick Cheney movie. Joining us with all the details, Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo, New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. All right, Raymond, let's start with that tense Oval Office meeting yesterday. What does the body language tell us?
Well, you know, Laura, we will examine each of the players here. Let's start with Nancy Pelosi. Like most Italians, I'm guilty, her hands give her away. Now watch this. I call this the back of the hand. Watch.
The White House, you have the White House, you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives, you have the votes.
Laura, you see what she's doing here. She doesn't need to fund a wall. She's created her own wall between she and Trump.
I thought she was going to do something.
Yeah, well, this is a kind of dismissive.
Yeah, the back of the hand.
I'm blocking you out. I'm not even going to give you any signals. And then she looks away at one point. Later, she literally turns her body and looks away from him.
Who's she talking to?
She's talking to the press. She's talking to Chuck Schumer, but she won't talk to the president. Now, later, she suddenly became Professor Nancy, and she started wielding a particular weapon at the end of her hand. Watch this.
You begin, you make your point, you state your case. That's what the House Republicans could do if they had the votes. But there are no votes in the House.
See the finger. She starts pointing, and this goes on. She schools him on legislative policy, that she's part of the first branch of government. That's school teacher, schooling Nancy, and she's kind of teaching him and putting him in his place. It's a very kind of interesting. But body language experts and a lot of the data will tell you this is a weapon. It's like threatening someone when you point at them directly. Let's go to this. This is the president trying to reassert authority here with what I call the king of the throne gesture. Watch for this.
The fact is, you do not have the votes in the House.
Nancy, I do.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he does. It's a domination.
That a lot. It's a domination.
He dominates the room. All right. And then you listen. It's like a megaphone. He's projecting his voice through his hands. You'll see him do that a lot. It's a typical Trump gesture, but it's asserting his power in the room.
He's always sitting on the edge of his seat. And
right. He's ready to pounce whenever he does an interview.
What about Chuck Schumer?
Hold on. Finally, things get very combative. Watch what the president does here. I call this, Laura, the pointed dagger. It's almost like a duel. Watch.
Going into the curtains almost.
He was definitely fading away. Okay, we've got to move on.
All right, tell me about this new Christian Bale film called Vice.
Are you familiar with Anchorman? Those great films,
they're fun.
Anchorman, Talladega Nights.
Hilarious.
Okay. Adam McKay, the director who brought you those movies, has now decided he's going to be an auteur, and he tells the story of Dick Cheney, but it's through a very kind of cracked prism, okay? He claims here that Dick Cheney is a drunk without ambition.
What?
Lynn Cheney helped reorient, and then he meets these very dark characters, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Nixon, and they teach him how to become this power monger.
This is stupid.
It's a very dark, and the facts are all over the place.
This says, what is the connection to reality?
Well, we're going to get to that in a moment. Okay. At the film premiere, Christian Bale, who plays Dick Cheney, and you have to say, he has vanished into this role. But he talked here about encountering the president, President Trump, back in 2011 when he was filming The Dark Knight Rises at Trump Tower. Watch.
I met him one time. We were filming on Batman in Trump Tower. And he said, come on up to the office. I think he thought I was Bruce Wayne because I was dressed as Bruce Wayne. So he talked to me like I was Bruce Wayne, and I just went along with it, really. Like that. It was quite entertaining. I had no idea at the time that he would think about running for president.
So they kind of take a swipe at the president on the red carpet.
I like the interviewer.
Yeah, giggling along. Well,
cute.
Here's the nice thing about this film that you have to keep in mind. This is Adam McKay's kind of twisted, cracked vision of Dick Cheney. He's turned this film into a weapon of mass destruction against the Cheneys and everyone they know.
Why is that relevant?
Look, people you and I will know, from Mary Madeline to Grover Norquist to Frank Luntz to Rush Limbaugh.
Frank Luntz.
Even Tyler Perry as Colin Powell. And as tempting as that is, this is not how I want to spend my Christmas.
No,
thanks.
That's going to be a big flop.
I want It's a Wonderful Life, not It's a Twisted One.
Wait, we got
Adam's
something.
head.
Speaking of fun.
Oh, yes.
Now, this is fun. We have some footage of a dance party, not Shannon Bream's Friday dance party. No, that's a fun one, by the way.
Yeah.
This is something you have to see to believe. Now, this happened in India.
It did.
What is it?
This is footage from a $100 million week-long wedding, Laura, thrown by India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani. Now, this is not one, but two former presidential contenders on the dance floor. Hillary Clinton and former Secretary of State John Kerry whooped it up. They're right there on the left-hand side of your screen.
That little move.
Oh, they look like a pair of Bollywood extras.
Oh, no, we need a highlight on John Kerry's
John Kerry's right there. He's right in the middle. You know, Laura, this reminds me.
Look at Hillary with the hand. Look, like she's doing this. Look, she's doing this.
She's
like
Uma Aberdeen. The Uma is there with her. They're all together there. Okay.
Oh, my God. Where's
Laura,
Cheryl Mills?
This is more evidence, and it reminds me of the video of President George W. Bush in 2007. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
He went to Africa and tried to dance with the tribal leaders.
I thought he was cute.
Yeah, well.
I thought he was adorable.
He comes off a little better than the Bollywood crowd, but this is all evidence, Laura, that politicians really
he's drumming
shouldn't
there.
dance.
Where's he dancing? Oh,
they shouldn't dance. Oh, he danced at the beginning. He did the George W.
But Hillary did that hand. First of all, here's the thing. Don't do the hand dance. That never works.
Why are we getting up in front of people and doing
But John Kerry looked like Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast. Didn't he look like Lumiere? Look, you're expecting melting wax to come off of him. Look at him. He's doing the turn.
And
He's
Hillary's doing the whole. She's it's really Mamma Mia.
White men and white women can't dance.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
No.
White politicians.
White politicians can't dance. Any party.
Always bad.
All right, Raymond, thanks so much. And when the Democrats come to power in the House, they have promised to shut down all investigations into the corrupt dealings at the FBI. How convenient. So is that good for you or me or the rule of law? House Intel Chair Devin Nunes here next.
When you become chairman, are you officially going to end this investigation?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a waste of time to start with, and there's nothing. The entire purpose of this investigation is to cast aspersion on the real investigation, which is Mueller. There is no evidence whatsoever of bias at the FBI or any of this other nonsense they're talking about.
Oh, none of it at all. Text messages, struck page, none of that. That was incoming House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler explaining he will not continue the investigations into the multiple levels of corruption revealed at the highest levels of the FBI just over the past few years. Now, the FBI's issues facing new scrutiny tonight. Now, after former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's defense team revealed some troubling details in a late Tuesday night sentencing memo, inside it, they revealed that disgraced former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, recommended, get this, that Flynn not have a lawyer present during his initial FBI interview. They want him to be very comfortable. Here with us exclusively tonight, House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes. Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here. What does it tell you about their so-called respect for the rule of law? They didn't give him any indication that this was any serious interview. they said, in fact, don't bring your lawyer, because if you do that, we're going to have to involve the Justice Department. And apparently they were like good friends in this interview. And
what's happened here to General Flynn is just, it's a tragedy. I've known General Flynn since the mid-2000s. Visited him numerous times in Iraq. He is an American war hero. You have heard me say this ad nauseum over and over again about the most important crime that was committed here was the leak of highly sensitive, compartmented information of General Flynn talking to the Russian ambassador.
To David Ignatius at the Washington Post, correct?
Yeah. Which he had, yes, and then later again it showed up in the Washington Post. I think even more information. That was a leak of a phone call of an American citizen that he had every right to make. It wasn't just that he was the national security advisor. Any American has the ability to talk to any ambassador that they want, and they used a law from the 1700s, the Logan Act, that had never been used.
But this was all a pretext. So people watching tonight understand. It looks like a setup. It looks like this is all pretextual. Mm-hmm. They knew what they had the transcript in their hands. The agent said so. Yeah. They had the transcripts, and they were ready. If Flynn said he didn't remember, they were going to read part of the transcript to him. But then he's in there without a lawyer, thinking that these are his buddies, and there's no problem. Of course I'll talk to them. I have nothing to hide. Presumably that's what he's saying.
Well, and I don't want to jump ahead, because I'm sure you're going to talk about this, but the 302s. So these are
the 302s are the
FBI
memos
reports
that they write after an interview with individuals of interest.
But they were not finalized for 7 months.
So they were not finalized until August of 2017.
Yes.
Why would that be? Wouldn't you go right back to the office and start working on them?
I don't know why that would have been, but I also know that we were briefed on those interviews on the House Intelligence Committee a month or two after those interviews occurred. So you have memos that would have been written during the interview, and then you have a briefing before the House Intelligence Committee, probably the Senate, and then you move onward, and then it's not finalized until August 22nd. So I'm glad that the judge is looking at this. I think the judge should also ask the House Intelligence Committee to provide the transcript that we have of Director Comey testifying before our committee.
Yeah, well, the judge...
He'd be interested in that also.
So the judge is seeking tonight, we learned, you're referencing, seeking to review key FBI notes before it makes its sentencing decision that are involving all this. Judge Emmett.
Right. He wants the notes beforehand and the 302s.
That will reveal a lot about what they actually thought and knew beforehand, right after they left, which was apparently that they didn't think he lied, correct?
That's correct.
So Peter Strzok,
that's our take of it, yes.
Peter Strzok did not think that Michael Flynn lied.
That's what I believe, at least from what the testimony that we received over many, many months, was that there was no lying had occurred. That's
so he wants two documents: a memo that then FBI Director Andrew McCabe wrote after speaking with Flynn, but ahead of the interview he did with the two agents during that same interview. So that's the FD 302. That McCabe part,
which is the finalization, the memorialization of the original interview. And I still don't understand how it took 7 months. And remember, Senator Grassley has been all over this for a year, asking for these 302s.
Sullivan also ordered the special counsel to hand over any memos or interview notes relevant to Flynn's interview. So this all goes to your point. This was a complete setup from the beginning against Flynn. It looks obvious to me. It's obvious to anyone who has bothered to follow this for 1 minute. Another thing that's obvious is how many politically motivated actors have populated the Mueller investigation. Not all, but I want everyone to remember who Jeannie Rhee is, just because of today, because she was speaking at the Cohen sentencing. He was sentenced today, got 3 years, Southern District of New York. And for people who don't know who she is, I want to remind you, she worked for the Clinton Foundation, right? She repped also Obama Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes during the House Select Committee on Benghazi. She repped, Ben Rhodes during all of that, and then she repped the Clinton Foundation in 2015. So she worked for Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. I mean, this is not someone who should be in the special counsel's investigation, and she also gave $5,400 too.
Yeah, I have no idea why Mueller picked anyone
connected with Hillary in the email investigation, and clearly
a known Clinton
crazy.
support. It's totally nuts. And if the shoe was on the other foot, the mainstream media would be going crazy. The Mueller investigation would have been shut down. It would have been called a fraud and a hoax from the beginning.
3 years? What does that tell you? Anything?
Well, I'm watching just to see how the media is making this out to be like that Trump did something wrong, when the reality is he's going to prison for tax evasion.
Yeah,
and so, you know, and I think if you look at what the Fed said, is the Fed said, look, this guy did a lot of bad things, where you have the special counsel's office saying the opposite.
Rep. Denny Heck on your committee says this is the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. That's what he said.
Well, we've heard a lot of that kind of talk over the last 2 years, and
Are people getting nervous, though, up on Capitol Hill? Any Republicans getting nervous about any of this?
No, not that I know of. I think we're getting frustrated that we continue to speak truth to power. We continue to get facts out there. And you have the mainstream media who has been involved in this from the very beginning. They were the very first ones to get the Steele dossier that really originated this entire show.
Devin Nunes, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Laura.
Up next, The Last Bite.